Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today in this beautiful Seattle afternoon. My name is Leon Weliki. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Power Apps, and I'll be joined by Christy Jefferson, that is over there, and Gary Pretty, and we will talk today about full stack scale with the Power Platform. And the way in which we'll show this is through transforming a shadow IT legacy application into a modern, cloud-based, managed, and governed app. This is how we will use our 45 minutes together. So first, we will start with a very brief intro to the Power Platform, just to level set. And then we will introduce our business challenge. Next, we will solve it in 3 steps. We will first build a core application, then optimize business processes, and finally deploy it and manage it. And we will end with a recap and calls to action. So let's get to it. The Power Platform, for the ones who are not familiar with it, is the world's most complete set of integrated, and that's a very important word, integrated, low-code development tools. We have 5 flagship products, each one specialized in one domain, which include Power Apps for web and mobile application development, Power Automate for process or workflow automation, Power Virtual Agents for chatbots and conversational agents, Power Pages for external data-driven secure websites, and Power BI for data exploration, analytics, and reporting. We also have a set of features supporting these products that include connectors. We have 1,000 connectors that you can use to connect to virtually anything. And if you want to connect is not there, you can build your own. AI Builder to use AI models, including foundational models. Dataverse, our cloud-scale SaaS database. Power Effects, an Excel-like formula language, fully open source, and managed environments. That is what admins can use to get more visibility and more control with less effort over the Power Platform solutions that they deploy. In Power Platform, we love developers. In fact, we like to say that Power Platform plus developers equals no limits. You can use your code to extend your solutions or to create components for others to use in their solutions. And in fact, when you combine the power of Azure and Visual Studio with the Power Platform, you can build business solutions of any size and complexity. And I mentioned the combination with Azure, but in fact, one of the very nice things about the Power Platform is that it has native integrations with all our flagship products. So all the things that you can do with Office, with Azure, with Visual Studio, with GitHub, you can combine them all together and build awesome applications and solutions of any size and complexity. Power Platform and the Microsoft ecosystem provide an unparalleled tool to build business solutions of any size and complexity. So with that, it's time to introduce our business challenge. It's one that probably many of you are familiar with. I experienced this in my professional life in the past. So Contosto is a young, fast-growing company. And early on, a highly motivated finance employee created an Excel file to track seller commissions. And then another highly motivated tech enthusiast in finance created a Win32 app to track seller percentages. And at the beginning, this was awesome because it helped them get going fast and start moving. But as they evolved and they created their IT department and matured their processes, all the things that were good at one time became liabilities. You see, the Excel file, for example, it gets locked, data gets lost, and it's not integrated with any of their systems. So basically what they are doing is they are running business-critical processes from a PC under someone's desk. Did anyone experience that? I see a few hands. Yes, we all did. So our challenge today is to digitally transform from shadow IT, represented by an Excel file under someone's desk, to a modern, cloud-based governed application. And the way in which we will do it is we will use the combined power of Power Platform, Azure, and everything that the Microsoft ecosystem has to offer with the help of the copilots to achieve what we just mentioned, like a cloud-based governed app. So let's get to solution. We will start, of course, from an Excel file, the seller's commission file. And with the help of the copilot, we will build a cloud database and a cloud application. Next, we will integrate that application with the master of sellers, the system of record where Contoso records all their sellers. That is a database that is stored in SQL Azure. Next, Contoso has an in-house built accounting system that is built using ASP.NET. And basically, we'll use Visual Studio to create a connector to connect our application to that system. And once we have all of that done, we will use Power BI to get good data visualizations over the system that we are creating. We mentioned a few minutes ago a Win32 app. We will use RPA to scrape it and a bot to bring that data into the application. Finally, we will bring Azure Monitor to get visibility into what's going on with the application. And at that point, we are ready. So we will deploy it in a managed environment. And once we have it deployed, we need to roll it out. So we will use Intune for the rollout in the organization. So I know that this sounds like a lot, but also I know that we can do this. So let's jump to it. So let's get to the solution. And we'll go with our first stage, building the core application. So our first step is going from an Excel file to a cloud application. And we need to store the data in the cloud, run the app in the cloud, and the app needs to be responsive. It needs to work with phones, tablets, and desktops. To make this happen, we will use the Copilot in Power Apps. So I'm going to get to my... So let's get started. What you see here is the Power App Studio. And in case that it looks... Okay, I'll keep going. In case that it looks any different than what you know from the past, is because... I'll keep going. In case that it looks different to what you're familiar with, if you know Power Apps, is because we refresh the studio to be more modern, faster, and easier to use. At the top, the first thing to notice is that this is a developer environment. So basically, we are going to build our application in that environment, and then we will deploy it to a production one like you would do with any solution that you build. Now, you might notice also that you can start building the solution using everyday words to represent what you want to do. But we are not going to do that in this case. We are going to start with data, and that data will come from our Excel file, which is the seller commissions file. So I pick the file, and at this point, what the Copilot is doing is analyzing the file to bring the data to Dataverse, but also to propose a schema. And let me show you what that file looks like. Nothing special, just one file with a bunch of records, like many of you might know in your professional life already. So I'm going to go back to Power Apps, and at this point, Copilot analyzed the data, proposed a schema, and brought the data. So let's look what's going on here. The first thing to mention is that this is a Copilot, and the name is very intentionally set. It's not an autopilot. It's a Copilot, so I am in control, and I can change almost everything that is proposed by the Copilot here. I could change the table name if I wanted to, but I won't. And the next thing to look is let's explore what schema the Copilot inferred. So you see, for the date column, I got a date, got a string here, so it seems very reasonable inferences. This is an interesting one that I want to take a second to show. In this case, this column, the commission types, it has a set of fixed values, similar to a C# enum. So it recommended a choice column, again, which is the equivalent of a C# enum, but not only that, it was able to lift all the values in that enum. The other thing, let's keep going. The other thing to look is that there is a total field that represents money, and for that, the Copilot is proposing using a currency column, which is what we use to represent monetary values. So at this point, this looks good, so I'll go ahead and create the app, and what's happening now, until now nothing got created, but now the Copilot is going to go ahead, create the table in Dataverse, create the application, and upload the data. This takes about 30 seconds, so I have one that I already pre-created, and the app looks good, but there are two things that I'd like to change. The first one, you see here I have a list of sales record, but they look like a list of people, but because I only have names. So what I want to do is I want to show the value of each commission along with the name of the person. So this is what we will do. We will use Power Effects to write an expression where we can bring from the item, we will use the currency. Remember that we mentioned that Copilot recommended a currency column. So because of that, I can get the currency symbol from that currency column. So this application that the Copilot suggested for me would work with any type of currency and would make it very easier to internationalize it. Just like that. So at this point, I wrote my expression, I have this list of people now with commissions, which makes more sense. It's closer to what this represents. But the other thing that I don't like as much is that this is a date time. And the date would be enough for me. I'm not sure about you, but I never remember how to work with dates. So in this case, I'm going to ask the Copilot for help. And what I can do is I can express what I want the format to be. And then the Copilot will recommend me a formula, which then I can decide to apply or not, which in this case I did. So at this point, the application is done. We have a first version of the app, so let's run it. As you can see, the app looks reasonable. But one thing that I want to call your attention to is this widget that you see here. That is what we call the device selector. This is a new capability that we just released that allows you to see what your app would look in different devices. In this case, an iPhone, which of course I can switch the rotation. And one thing to mention is that the app that the Copilot created is fully responsive, which means that it will render adequately based on the space that it has in the screen. So at this point, we started from an Excel file, and with the Copilot, we created a cloud database, a cloud application that is fully responsive and works across devices. Even one more. So going back, let's go to the next step. Our next step is, now that we have the application, it's still completely separated from the rest of the company. So what we need to do now is connect to the seller's SQL database. That is where the company has all the seller's information. And after we connect, we want to relate that new table that we connected with the table that we created 2 minutes ago. To make this happen, we will use Dataverse virtual tables. And the way in which Dataverse virtual tables work is super interesting. So the data will stay in SQL Server, but we will have it projected in our Dataverse database. And then once we do that, we will create a relationship between that projection and the table that we created a few minutes ago. So let's get back to the demo. And in this case, what you are seeing, what I want to show you is the Azure portal where I have the Contoso sellers database. There are a few tables here. This is the one that looks more interesting, so let's check that we have the right thing here, which we do. Seems like the right thing, so I'll go ahead and create a virtual table against this one. So going back to Power Apps Maker Portal, what I'll do is I'm in the list of tables, so I will create a new table from external data. That's the key. And what I'll do is I'll connect to the SQL Server, and as soon as I say that, it will offer me all the tables that are available for me to use. We already know that is the sellers table, so I'll pick that one up. And now it will offer a set of values that I can change in the way in which that reflect how it will be projected in Dataverse. All of the defaults are fine. I could change the table name, the name of any of the columns, but this looks good to me, so I'll go ahead and create it. And here I can see a summary. This is where the table is. This is the table that we are creating. And that's all it takes. At this point, what's happening is that the Dataverse table is being created, but the data is still in SQL. We won't move any data around. This will take about 15 seconds. Oh, perfect, it's done. So the next thing that we want to do is we have the table, but those two tables are not connected. They're separated already. So we will go ahead and we will create a relationship between this new table and the table that we created a few minutes ago. And we will create a one-to-many relationship because one seller can have many commissions. So, sorry about that. So from the seller's master, I will pick the sales record table, and boom, that's all I need to do. At this point, we created the application, we created the virtual table, and we connected that virtual table to the table that we created for the application 2 minutes ago. So now that we have this connected, what is next? The next step is to connect to the custom in-house built accounting system. Every time that a commission is added, deleted, or changed, what we want to do is we want to get that reflected in the corporate accounting system. And to make this happen, we will use Visual Studio to create a custom connector that will expose a web API from that system that is hosted in an Azure App Service. And once we have that custom connector, we will use it in the app that we just created. So every time that a new record is added, we will send a message to the accounting system, to that web API. So here we have very simple web API. And the way in which you can publish this API as a connector, there are multiple ways to do it. In this case, I use Visual Studio to create the connection. And I already have it pre-created. But the way to do it is during publishing, you can create a dependency. Let me show you how simple it is. Basically, you provide minimal data. Where do you want to put that connector? What's the name of the connector, etc. And we will use the Swagger file, and we will create it for you and publish it. In this case, I already have published it, so I'll go to the application and I'll use it. So if I go back to the app that we were building, which is this one, first thing that I need to do is I need to add the connector to the application. So I'll go ahead to the list of connectors and add the Contoso accounting connector. That is the one that I showed you 1 minute ago. And once I added the connector here, I can now use it with Power Effects in my application. So this is what I'll do. When a new record is added, here, when we submit the form, after we submit the form, I'll go ahead and invoke one of the functions in the connector. So this means that if somebody adds a new seller commission, we will add the commission, and then we will invoke the API to add it to the accounting system. So at this point, we have our application created, we connected to the database, we connected to the accounting system. What's next? So now that we have all of this, what we want to do is add a better data visualization to better understand the data that we have in the system. And to make this happen, we will use a Power BI dashboard that will let us navigate the data. And to add that Power BI dashboard in our application, we will use the Maker Copilot. So let's take a look. Going back to the application, first I want to show you the Power BI dashboard, which is a Power BI dashboard like you know. It's a report, actually, like you know and love already, where you can navigate and interact with the data and get insights. So we're going to go back to our application, and this is what we'll do. The first thing that we'll do is we need to add a new page. So we'll go ahead and ask the Copilot to add me, to create a new screen with header, main section, and footer layout. So I'm giving the Copilot a rather complex prompt. I'm asking a new screen with a particular layout, and I want it to be responsive. Remember how we saw that our app works in a phone, works in a tablet, works in a PC. So with just this prompt, the Copilot will go ahead and add that screen for me with the proper layout. And once it does, I will be able to add the control. So let's give it a few seconds to make it happen. But I'll continue. So basically, what will happen right now is that screen will be added, and the screen will have a header, a body, and a footer. And it's going to be a responsive screen. So the next thing that we want to do, OK, I'll add it myself. But in general, I mean, one thing. These are the perils of live demo. Everything that you're seeing right now is live code. And as such, sometimes might fail. But again, all demos that you saw, none of them are PowerPoint, are no recordings. We are running live code that the team put together and that I'm using right now. So in this case, we have this setback, but it's OK. I could create the same screen. And one thing that I wanted to tell you, actually, which is a good segue from this, someone might be wondering, it is great that you can talk with the Copilot to add things, but this seems to be a drag and drop, point and click. Do I need to do everything, writing down what I want? And the interesting thing that you can combine the power of the Copilot with also the power of having a drag and drop environment or a point and click environment. So let me show you. In this case, this screen would have been created with the Copilot by giving it a prompt. But also, if I wanted to, I can find the Power BI tile, add it to my screen, and I can use a combination of the Copilot and drag and drop to create my app. And not only that, let me bring it. I'm going to embed the report. So I'm going to get the URL of the report. And what we'll do now is I'm going to configure my Power BI so it shows that report. And that's done. That's all I need to do. I'll do a couple of minor tweaks to make it responsive. And that's it. One other thing also, not only I can do drag and drop, but also I can go between screens. And if I wanted to, I can copy and I can paste. So basically, what I'm trying to show is that you get the best of all worlds. You can use the copilot, you can use drag and drop, you can cut and paste. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is that we give you intelligence tools that help you to do your job as fast as possible. Now, the last step in this part of the journey is now that we have our application, it's fully integrated, it has a dashboard, how do we know what's going on with it? We want to have visibility into sessions for troubleshooting and debugging, but we also want to know how users are consuming the application. To make this happen, we will use two things: the built-in Power Apps Monitor and Azure Monitor's application insights. So let me show you how. First, for Power Apps Monitor, this is a feature that is part of Power Apps, so there's nothing that you need to install. It comes out of the box. And you can see a stream of events from a particular session. And that session can be local, or it can be a remote session. And the only thing that you do is you turn it on, you start using the application, and we record everything that's going on. And you get access to the network traces, variables, everything. So you can understand what's going on and troubleshoot. Now, this gives you access to one session, but if you want to see at scale what your customers are doing, you can use Azure Monitor's application insights. And in this case, using it is super simple. So what you do is this. You go to the Azure portal, and from your application insights instance, copy the instrumentation key. Come to the Power App Studio and copy that instrumentation key in your application. Boom, that's done. That's all you need to do. After you do that, when your users start using the application, you will get all the reports that application insights have about funnels, usage, performance, etc., without having to add any additional code, formula, or controls. Now, in case that you want additional information that is more custom to your application, things that represent events that are unique to your business, you can use the trace API, or the trace function in PowerFX, which lets you emit your own traces. Those traces are added to the workspace associated to the application insights instance that you have, so you can query them using Custo. And at this point, we completed the first stage of our journey. So I'm going to invite Christy Jefferson to show us how to optimize the business process.
Hello, everybody. So now we're going to take a look at how do we optimize. He's created a great seller application. The next thing we want to do is how do we optimize these business processes even further with Power Automate and with Power Virtual Agents. This company, much like many companies, still have a number of legacy applications that are core to their business processes. So what we're going to do is we have an opportunity to help optimize their processes against these legacy applications. So let's look at an automation that we've created. So if we go and take a look at what we've done here, moving from the application, as soon as that application submits a sales record, it's going to kick off this automation. Once it does, it's going to add it to the work queue, and it'll work through processing going against the legacy application. So let's take a quick look. So here I'm showing that we've added this sales item to a work queue. This is a new feature that's now in preview. By adding work items to a work queue, you're able to ensure the prioritization, ensure when it gets processed. And if anything goes wrong, you can reprocess these items. Now what you can see is that I've added it to a work queue, and I'm taking some of the values from that item that I'll be using for further processing later down. This work queue, as you see, was actually created in advance. But if you want to create new workflows or you want to see work queues that are available to you, you can just go here in the left-hand navigation. Once you get there, you can see all of the work queues that you have access to. It shows you the items that you have in the queue, their status, and also if you want deeper information, you can just go directly in and look at each of the work queue items. Now, if I want to go back and want to create a new work queue, it's just as easy as clicking here, adding the new work queue, and moving on from that point. So let's go back to the workflow. So now that I've added this to the work queue, I'm going to be updating the status within Dataverse, just letting them know that the process is moving along. And then the next part is kicking off my desktop flow. The desktop flow we can look at here is a script that we've written in Power Automate for Desktop. Power Automate for Desktop is where you can automate anything that you do on the desktop, as well as to access things like these legacy apps. So what we first do is to take these variables that we've taken in early from the queue, and we're going to be using them within our automation. And as we go, the next thing that we're doing is we're opening up that legacy application so that we can enter this data in just like a human would do. And then once that's added, I can extract information from that record as well to go on to do the calculations that I want to do. In this case, I want to calculate commission, because that's what was I had the data in my legacy app. Now, the great news is that now in preview, we have custom actions. Custom actions lets you develop new actions using our SDK that you can publish to your organization. And once you have them published, they'll show up right in your assets library, so you can see all of the custom actions that you have available. This is a great way to go to your business-specific needs outside of our standard actions. Now, once I've actually, in this case, I've added the commission calculation to my actions, you can see in the left-hand navigation at the bottom, we now have a custom actions section. So anything that you want to use that's custom will also be right in the easy design canvas. So if I look at the calculate commission action that I created, you can see that I was able to define what is the information that I need. I can populate it with the parameters, and the output I get will be the final commission rate and the final commission. This is exactly what I wanted to get from that legacy application. So now if I go back, and I go back to where we were at, we looked at how we added to a work queue and so on. Now I want to go back to the application itself. Now let's see how all of this works together. If I go and submit a sales record, which I will do, now that should be kicking off my workflow so that I can see all of these steps in action. And what it's doing is it's going to be writing it to Dataverse. I see that it is not yet running, but it will start running, and once it does, we'll be able to look at the status. And here we go, it's running. So I can click into it, and I can watch it actually go through each step of that flow. So the first thing, when the sales order has been submitted to Dataverse, already done, I've added it to my queue. I've updated the work state. I'm currently in midst of that custom action. So this step is going to be opening that legacy application. It's going to be entering that information and doing and simulating just like a worker would be doing. All of the data entry, but in an automated fashion. And so you'll see right now, as it actually pops up, you see how it's writing out all of that information. Once it's been written, it will go, save that away, get that information that I need to calculate that commission, and it will finalize and write it back into Dataverse again. And once it's written back into Dataverse, now I have access to it to be used within that application that I had. So if I go back into my application, I refresh it, and I'll now see that I have the final commission rate and the final commission, all in a very easy process. We just automated, working with the legacy system, showing off how we can actually use our work queues to manage your core processes and also using custom actions for your proprietary needs. So with that, I'll hand it off to Gary to talk about Power Virtual Agents.
Okay, folks. So what I'm going to talk about now is how we can build on what we've seen already with the Dataverse table and the data that's been augmented using Power Automate, and how we can potentially make it available through a conversational application. So right now, I'm in Power Virtual Agents, and I've created what's called a topic, which is essentially a piece of your conversation design. I've added some trigger phrases as well, which let us understand the intent of the user if they want to get access, maybe to the latest commission data. The first thing I'm going to do is I'd like to let users ask to see the latest commission data for a particular customer over a certain period of time. And ideally, I'd love to be able to do that using what's called an adaptive card. But historically, in PVA, using an interactive adaptive card has been incredibly difficult or potentially sometimes impossible. Now I've designed my card here on the Adaptive Cards Designer, and all I have to do is head over to the right tab, copy the JSON for the card, add the new node to my canvas, and then paste the JSON in. And as soon as I do that, I get a preview, but more importantly now, all of the output variables for that adaptive card are instantly passed for me. This is a huge step forward for people who want to prompt with these interactive cards. What I want to do, though, is I want to take it one step further and make sure that this card is dynamic. And I can actually change my JSON to PowerFX with just one click. That's then going to let me replace the pre-existing hard-coded data with an existing variable that I've already got within my application. And with that, that card will now be dynamically populated at runtime. The next thing for me to do is to actually call Power Automate to actually get the information back regarding the commissions. I've already got a Power Automate flow created, and I can use those variables that were output from the previous node and passed from the adaptive card JSON. And this Power Automate flow is going to return me some JSON. Now, this is another big step forward for us. This is our new canvas. It's generally available this week. And the thing that it does is it makes it incredibly easy to build powerful and sophisticated bots. And things that were previously impossible using Power Virtual Agents are now very straightforward. So I want to be able to actually use this JSON response. And now to do that, I can use the parse value node. And for this, I simply pass in the results that came back from Power Automate. And then I can define the data type. And here I'm going to use from sample data. And I just need to provide an example of what that JSON will look like. So to do that, I've already tested my flow. And I can simply copy an example of a previous output from the flow, paste that into here, hit confirm, and instantly we pass the schema of a new PowerFX table variable. And this will actually drive IntelliSense for me on the canvas as well. Next, all I need to do is create a new variable to actually store this data. I'm going to call this commissions. And that's it. I've now passed my information that's come back from Power Automate, and I'm ready to display it to the user. To display it to the user, I'll just finally add a send message node. And again, I'm going to use an adaptive card. This time, I've already built some PowerFX that I can use to display the card. So I'll switch over to formula mode. And I'll grab that from here. And what I want you to note here is that the variable that was passed for us, I'm actually using PowerFX functions to iterate over that data and manipulate that data with ease on the canvas. Again, not something that was previously possible. So now that I've done that, let's actually make sure that it's working as I would expect. I'm going to open the test canvas. I'll restart a new conversation. And I'll just say get commissions. What we should see is our dynamically populated adaptive card. Here I'm going to choose fourth coffee. You can see that I've got my customer list there. And I'm going to choose 90 days. I'll hit show commissions. That's going to call Power Automate, pull the data back, parse it using our parse value node, and display it on the card. I've just scratched the surface of what is now possible with our new generally available canvas. I'd encourage you all to go and take a look at what's there. And right now, let's hand back to Leon to see what else we've got in store. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Gary and Christine. That was great. So now that we have our app completed, right? We build the app, we optimize the business process, we need to deploy it. So the next step is all about deployment. So what we need to do is deploy it to a place where admins have full visibility and control. And also as we deploy, we want to do it in a safe, repeatable, and automatable way. To make this happen, we will set up a production environment as a managed environment. And then we will use Power Pipelines to deploy the solution between the environment where we developed and the one where we are going to run it. Managed environments are our solution for governance at scale. With managed environments, admins get more visibility and more control with less effort. To make an environment managed, it's super, super simple. You just get one of the environments, flip a switch, and that's it. In 3 clicks, your environment is managed. Managed environments are generally available and ready for you to use. Let me show you a few examples of, one example for each one of these properties. More visibility, so admins can get usage insights, and they can understand what's happening in the environment with a lot of clarity coming to the Power Platform admin portal. But you might be thinking, that's awesome, but the admin needs to log in somewhere. In addition to providing a place where admins can get insights, we also send them an email digest where they can get informed of relevant things, so they will learn what's going on in their environments without having to be on top of them all the time. For more control, admins can set different forms of limits. In this case, a sharing limit indicating that an application can be shared only with 2 people and not with groups. And once an admin sets those sharing limits, those are enforced in the tools directly, fully integrated. So here you see that a maker is trying to share with a 3rd person their application, but we first won't let them do that, and we will explain them why. Finally, less effort. With pipelines, we provide a super simple in-product ALM solution for everyone that participates. Admins can set up a pipeline in less than 2 minutes with a graphical user interface. Then citizen developers can use that pipeline very easily. They make 1 click, and they use all the guardrails that the admin set for them. And for professional developers, they can benefit from the citizen experience. With 1 click, they can deploy. But also, we have a CLI solution, so it can be added to the build and deployment processes. And there's one more thing that I want to show you here. So let me switch back to the Maker Studio. And here we are in a solution that has a pipeline already configured. This is the solution that we just built. And a pipeline has been already configured by the admin to deploy from our development environment to a managed environment. So just by clicking deploy, we will start the process. Again, super simple. It will let us select where do we want to deploy, when, now or later. Better now than later. And then it will validate the solution to make sure that it's compliant with the policies that we set. And one of the things that I wanted to show you is that here is another place where we get help from our copilot. In this case, the copilot will analyze the solution and provide a description of everything that is inside of it. And not only that, I can change that description because, again, remember, it's a copilot, not an autopilot. And I can decide if I wanted to apply it. So very easily, not only I could deploy with 1 click, but also I could get release notes with the help of the copilot. And this takes us to our last step. So now that we deployed the application, we want to make it available to our customers. And in this case, what we want is that the customers have the ability to launch the app with a single icon, not going through the Power Apps player, but launch it like any other app. And we want to have a way to manage the application rollout through the organization. To make this happen, we will use a feature that is called wrap, that let us wrap our application in its own launcher. We will use Azure Keyboard to sign it, and then we will use Intune to manage the rollout throughout our organization. So, coming back to the Power Apps portal, super simple how to wrap an application. So if we go to the solution again that we had, all I need to do is go to the application and select wrap. If you tried this in the past and it looks hard, you are right. That's why we have a new experience for wrap that is way simpler, which basically lets you go through a very simple wizard where you give us a little bit of data like the name of the app, like what platforms are you going to target. Even you can provide a key vault that we will use to sign your application, configure branding information, register the app in Azure, in Dev Center, and at this point, I'm ready to build the application. And if I hit build, that will trigger the build process that will generate the package with the application. That package can be deployed in multiple ways. One of them is Intune. So in this case, what we did is we are using Intune to roll out the application to our organization, to Contoso. So here we are seeing the Intune portal for Contoso, where in their list of applications, you will see that they have the Contoso Sellers app. Not only that, if we go to the Android apps, of course, you will see it here too. Finally, let's take a look at what the application looks like. So I have here my mobile device. And as you can see, I have an icon to launch the app. I'll go ahead and launch it. And what you see is that this launched directly the app. As we saw, the app works properly in a mobile app and knows how to responsibly render itself based on the available screen real estate. If we tilt the phone, the app will render accordingly. And not only that, we have also the agent that Gary just created, integrated in the application, and also the Power BI dashboard that we created a few minutes ago. Also, when we come to the Power BI dashboard, not only we can see the dashboard, we can interact with the dashboard. So you can tap in any of the shapes in the dashboard and get the insights and do all the things that you typically do with Power BI. Everything that you know and love about Power BI is available for you to use in the app. So let's recap. We've been through a lot in these last 43 minutes. We went from an Excel file under someone's desk to a fully managed cloud application in 45 minutes. The reason why we could do this so efficiently, of course, the reason why we could do this so efficiently is because we use the combined power of the Power Platform, the Microsoft ecosystem that includes Azure, Office, Intune, our security assets, and the help of the Copilot. This solution used a lot of the constituents of the Microsoft ecosystem, but we just barely scratched the surface of what can be done with the Power Platform. As I leave you, I want to leave you with 3 calls to action. Number 1, please try this out. Build your own solutions. A really good place to start is aka.ms/lowcode. Next, check out our blogs for latest announcements. Power Platform is a space that has a lot of movement all the time. We are doing new things all the time. The blogs are one of the best ways to know what's going on, especially now at Build, that we have a lot of things to share with the world. And then watch the other low-code build sessions. Many of them already happened, but are recorded. And for example, the first one, we show the inner and outer loop to create that connector that we showed like 20 minutes ago. Last, 2 final things before we leave, and we are almost out of time. Number 1, just want to mention our Microsoft Power Platform conference that is going to be in Vegas early October. I'll be there, Christine will be there, Gary will be there, the team will be there, and we hope to see you there. And finally, as we were preparing the session, we compiled a set of learned resources that you can use to continue your learning journey for Power Platform. So I hope that you find them useful, and thank you very much for joining me so late in the day, for staying with us, and looking forward to hear from all of you and to the awesome apps that you will build with the Power Platform. Thanks, everyone.